Welcome back to another episode of Rocket Revenue, where we talk about predictable, repeatable revenue. And we actually open source Rocket Shipping's model and how we are actually trying to build predictable, repeatable growth. And, we've got Troy Barter. He is the head of revenue at Rocket Shipping, among many other things. But today we're going to talk about sales, particularly salespeople, and how they can, once they've gotten good at sales, how do you continue to build your skill set? How do you continue to train? Athletes, they don't just get good at a sport and then stop. I think a lot of salespeople out there in the world get good at sales and then stop trying to get better. A lot of people are natural sellers and they never trained in the first place, but they could also get better. So today's topic is how to improve your sales skills, but also just techniques, tactics that Barter has put into practice in his own sales and taught others as far as how to develop and continually get better in the sales world. Because, of course, if you're in sales, the goal is to build a book of business to make money. And if you're not continually improving, you're not continually making more income. So, Barter, with that said, do you
Yeah,
want to kick
so
it off with your thoughts?
I've done a lot of thought on this. So that is the first one. Like, if you're not growing, you're dying. Is definitely part of it when it comes to sales. But another way of looking at it, like, why is it important to consistently get better?
Yeah.
Most salespeople don't. They usually, I broke this down on LinkedIn. Like, most salespeople can identify with this like routine that salespeople usually get into. Even if you're an A player, you probably fell into this routine at some point if you've done enough sales jobs, because it's not just finding the right person; it's the right person at the right time in the right frame of mind. So most salespeople at most jobs, even a good job, they'll start at a new place and they'll really grind. Right? We have a new hire right
Yeah.
now who is an A player who will be in within the month, and I know he's grinding right now to learn everything. He wants to get as good as he possibly can. Right?
Yeah.
Usually, that's the first thing that people will do. They will honestly, for real, grind, put in the work to get good. And where they'll work to reach is a personally acceptable level of performance, right? Like that, like, so that's going to vary depending on who it is. All right. Some people might be like, dude, as long as I don't get fired and I'm making like okay money, I'm good. And they'll put in work to get good enough for that to be where they are. And they're like, oh, cool, I made it. I'm good. Once
Yeah.
they hit that level, and if you're an A player, that might not be good enough. It might be, well, I need to beat everybody for this to be acceptable for me. And then once they get there, they're like, all right, cool. Once they reach whatever that personally acceptable level is, then they will find a low effort motion that keeps them at that level, that
Yeah.
doesn't require them to grind like they did to get to that level. I see you smiling,
Human
Gabe.
nature there.
Yeah, I mean,
I
it's what
mean,
everyone's looking for, right? Is comfort when it comes to sales. Like, you don't want to have to grind the way that you did on day one, on day 101. Like, it'd be nice if things could kind of slow down a bit and you could kind of fall into a routine based on what you've already learned and based on the work that you've put in. And everyone does this. It's like it's nature. The problem is that staying at that level requires you to continue to maintain momentum. And if you coast and you go on autopilot, it's impossible for you to build momentum. You can only keep what you have. So sales is not a downhill ride without turns. It goes up and down. There's turns, there's obstacles. So it's impossible to coast in sales and keep that level. But everyone's like, oh, I made it. Now I'm good. Now let me just find that
yeah.
motion that'll keep me here and I'm good. And that's not how it works for a few different reasons. So, like, one is like, if you looked on LinkedIn, the idiot gurus on there would be like, well, what worked yesterday won't work today, or what works today won't work tomorrow. That's actually not true. It will work. The problem is that your target tomorrow isn't the same target that you have today. And it's rare that sales teams and sales leaders move the target down. It's consistently growing, particularly in tech sales or anywhere where you're VC backed or you have funding. They expect you to grow at exponential rates every year. So what got you there will probably keep you there a bit, but there isn't good enough is the problem. It's going to continue to grow, so you have to continue to work to get better. And if you're coasting, now you have to build momentum from scratch instead of just working to continue and maintain the momentum that you already had,
Well, yeah,
which
and
is a
if
problem.
you coast and you get to a point where you have to kind of like put more work in to re-up, right, to get back to where you were and needed to be, it was a waste of time anyways, because then you had to go back to not maybe square one,
Yep.
but certainly had to put in more work than you would have if you would have just consistently put in the effort.
And
I think that the reason this happens in sales more than any other profession, for business side anyways, is that most very gifted sellers don't didn't have to train that much to be good at sales in the first place, right?
yep,
And I think that this happens a lot. They get burnt out if they have to do too much, CRM work or follow up or anything that's
yep,
outside of their daily, like I just want to sell. That is why the trajectory of SDR to AE to senior AE to sales manager is actually normally the path, is because they want to be like, I was so good at selling that I don't have to anymore, and now I will just be the manager.
yep,
I think that's broken, because managers
yeah.
that are great sellers almost always are not great managers. Troy Barter is an exception to that, but you were a process oriented seller. And so I would not be a great sales manager. I never have been, but I was a good seller. So
So it's
I
funny.
think
Well,
that's
actually,
part of the dichotomy.
it's funny. I'll actually cover that too because that is a part of this. What makes a good manager and what doesn't. If you follow the process that we'll cover here, you'll become a better candidate to be a manager by like a mile. So
Yep.
that is the motion, right? People get that low effort motion. Then what happens? And here's why it doesn't work. Is, and again, LinkedIn, the gurus are going to hate this. Sales is a competition. Whether you like it or not, it's a competition. If I get hired, if Gabe hires me, I'm the only rep, right? And I'm crushing it. I'm doing $100,000 in revenue a year, and we weren't even expecting to do 10,000, right? I'm crushing it. These are made up numbers, by the way, but
Yeah.
I'm crushing it, right? Okay, cool. Well, let's expand. Let's hire another 4 salespeople. All right, we hire them. Fantastic. I've got 4 peers. Let's say all of them do $250,000 next year, and I still do 100. All right. My value from being this amazing rep that did 10x what we expected is now nothing because sales is a competition. And what the other people do is an indicator of what your worth is as an employee. That sounds negative, but that's a fact. That's just the way that it is. Not only is it a competition internally, it's a competition externally. So if we don't get better, our competition gets better, both from the product perspective and the sales perspective.
People
We
forget
want,
about that point.
yeah,
Yeah. They forget about the fact that there's other sellers out there selling products that are competitive to the company they
right.
work with.
So back to that motion we were saying, that routine that salespeople fall into. They do that low effort motion, and then inevitably they get passed. They either get passed by the people that are their coworkers that continue to work, or maybe have more natural skill, and they got past them, or they got passed by their competition. The deals that they used to win when they were up against a competitor, they no longer do because the gap between the product they're selling and what their competition is selling has gotten smaller, or because those salespeople have gotten better. They've worked at getting better than that person. But either way, those deals are now harder for them to win. So now, where they were at a level of comfort, where they were happy, now they're not. They're not making the money that they used to. They're not winning over the deals that they used to. And because they're not happy, and they really have two options here, they could realize that the work that they put in at the start, they should have at least continued to do some semblance of work like
Baseline.
that
Yeah.
to stay on top, or to stay at the level that they are. It was going to require more work than what they anticipated. But no one does that. What everyone does is they say, well, it's not me, it's the job, and I need to find a new place where I can get to the level where I want to go, or with the level I'm comfortable being at. And they switch jobs inevitably, and then they start all over again. They grind again. They get to that level. They find that low effort motion. They get past. They leave. And it happens over and over and over again until they either leave sales or they retire with way less money than they should. That is the life of most salespeople. That's generally how it goes. When you're like, man, this guy's pretty good. Like, why are they moving from one place to the next every year? And it's like, well, you get good enough for your standards, then you slow down, and once you slow down, you're screwed. You can't. You have to continue to at least work to get better at things, and that's really like the kind of the purpose of this one is like, all right, well, how do you do that?
Yeah. So
Um,
we've laid out the reasons of
yep,
why you want to. And one more thing is that we talked about, if you had to start over, or if you had to, you lost momentum and you had to kind of go back and rebuild a pipeline. That I wasn't even thinking about the fact that people will just end up having to go to a new company and completely start over, and have
yep,
to do all of the cold calling and the things that they don't want to do anymore. And obviously, that could be a whole different like episode of like, why would you jump company to company unless the comp plans are set up to only pay you in the beginning and you kind of get hosed later. At Rocket, we do it the exact opposite. You got to
Right.
build a book,
Yeah.
but you always will make more money if you stay longer, because the only people who stay longer are the ones who are good sellers. So that's, you have to align incentives. But so now that we've talked about, yeah, basically why you would want to continue to get better, or at least have a motion in place to always have your sales skills sharpened.
Yep.
How do you go about doing that? Is it just, a combination of repetition and always trying to learn something new, or what are your thoughts on that?
So that's where, like you were saying earlier, like the difference between someone that has like a manager potential or the potential to always consistently get better, and those that are a natural salesperson.
Yeah.
Which, so a natural might be someone, everyone knows one, right? If you've been in sales long enough, that they consistently hit their target, they do well. Um, and if you ask them what their secret is, they almost will always say, Man, I just wake up and grind every day." Like that's what they're like. They don't have an answer for you. They can't get specific on what makes them great. And it's because they're completely clueless in terms of what they're doing. Like they know what they're doing, they know how to do it, but it's luck. So what happened? In other words, their particular skill set and their particular natural disposition to how they have conversations and how they approach the job happens to fit really well with the steps to the sale and the sales process where they are and the customers that they're selling to. It happened to be right place, right time, great fit.
Mhm.
But with naturals, what happens is one of two things or both. One, if that natural ever leaves, someplace real sees them crushing it over there, and then they hand them a bag. Hey man, we'll pay you an extra 100 grand a year if you come over here and sell this product. We think that
Do
you
the
could
same
do it.
thing. Yeah.
They fall flat on their face. And the reason why isn't because they're not a good salesperson. They are a good salesperson, but they don't know why. And when you move from one place to the next, you bring your toolbox with you, your bag of tricks that you know how to do. And if you don't know what you're doing and you don't know how to label it, and you don't know what those things are, and you don't know why you're doing it, when you're doing it, how often you're doing it, when you move over to somewhere else, you don't know which of your skills are transferable skills that you can now inject into the new process, and you don't know which ones
Exactly.
to leave in the box and never take them out again while you're working at the next spot. And if you don't know that, you're kind of screwed when you go to the next place unless you happen to luck out again, and it rarely
Yeah.
works that way. The other thing is, they make the worst managers, because a great manager can take what made them great and repeat it in other people. They can replicate it. If you don't know what it is that's making you great, you stand zero chance to be able to replicate that in somebody else. And so
Mhm.
learning how to do things the way that we'll cover next enables you not only to be a much better salesperson where you currently are, but if you ever went anywhere else, you're going to have a much easier time being able to be a success again. And you're going to be able to repeat what you're doing if you ever wanted to move into a leadership role. Like
Yeah.
this is very clearly exactly what I did that led to me being able to not just be a great individual contributor, but a great manager too. And I can say that. I mean, I still get I got a phone call the other day from someone saying that I was best manager that they had. I haven't worked with them in a decade. So I think confidently say that at this point, and it's very specifically because of this stuff.
Yeah. So what is it? What would you say, without giving away the entire playbook?
Yep.
But what are some of the steps? Maybe just make it specific to the natural seller who doesn't know what they're doing, but they're
Yep.
successful anyways. What can they do to, if they had to leave, or if they had to rebuild, or if they wanted to just get better over time, to be able to put some predictable, repeatable systems in place
Yep.
to be a better seller?
So first thing is you need to have identified and really mastered the steps to your existing sales process. So always say, like, I don't ever become an expert at the product. I become good at the product wherever I'm at. I can definitely present it. Like that's the job. I can do a discovery that'll lead to the solutions, of course, but
Yeah.
that's not really the PR word that I become an expert on. The product. I become an expert on the prospects, on their problems, and the process itself, the sales process. So prospects, problems, process, that's what I become an expert on. So that third one, process, you need to become an expert on. What you need to become an expert on is the steps to your sales process. So how do you do that? Well, first off, the steps are more than likely already laid out wherever you're at. There's a pretty good chance that you already have deals staged out. We've already done podcasts on how to stage it out that you could go back to. So we don't have to like exhaust it too much. But really, if you didn't have it, what you would do is you would think about the sale from point A to Z, from before you even talk to a prospect. How do you find the prospects? Where are they? What do you do to get them? What do you do to even get one to reach out to? All the way to a closed one deal. Write down absolutely everything that you do with the prospect, any action that you do, question that you ask, any demo that you do, the entire thing, meetings that you set, people that you loop in, exhaustively write all of those things down. And what you're going to be able to do next is you're looking for tangible events that occur or actions that occur that let you know that you have moved from one step in your sales process to the next. An easy
Yeah.
example would be a booked meeting, right? So you might have a lead stage and then you might have a booking stage, right? I know that I've made it to the booking stage when I book a meeting. That's the action, and that's what you would call an exit gate. So what you're looking for is you're looking for steps. First, you're going to write all of it out. Then what you're looking there is like, what are the exit gates here? What are actual tangible things that I can measure in the CRM, or that I could be like, well, I know that I have 10 bookings. All right, well, then that's a step right there.
Yep.
That booking step is a step because you can measure it. And that's what's going to be important when it comes to everything else that we talk about. So you have steps, and the steps are created based on clear exit gates that can be measured. Right. So once you have all of your exit gates, you have all of your steps. Within those steps are going to be all of the actions. And it's not going to be one action per step. So, for example, if you go from that lead stage to the booking stage, what do you need to do there? Well, you're not just going to call and say, meeting book with you, right? And then it's done, right? No, I got
Yeah.
to call, I got to build rapport, I got to get past the gatekeeper. I might need to leverage social proof. I might need to send out an email with a case study to get them interested. I need to do a value prop. I need to overcome objections. And then I need to close ultimately on a meeting and make sure that I book the right people and make sure it's halfway qualified for it to actually count. And then I move it over to the booking stage. Those are a whole bunch of actions within that step that
Yeah.
aren't steps in their aren't like their own step. They're really steps within a step, but they don't really have like a clear exit gate that's measurable. So it doesn't really count as a step. But all of
Yeah.
those things lead to the exit gate, right? And once you
And we
have
should
those
be
exit
writing
gates,
those things down, is what you're
mhm,
saying, for each deal, and looking for trends on,
write
like,
it all
okay, I
down.
did it for this deal and it worked, and I did it
Yeah.
for that deal and it worked. I forgot to do it for that deal.
So the reason why you're writing all of this stuff out, even if you already have this stuff in your CRM, like the stages, still write all of this out, because what you're creating is, you remember, I think they're called, it's like a Haney repair manual. You used to see them, like my uncle used to have a bunch of them, and they'd be this manual, and then the cover would be like a car, like it might be like a Porsche, but it was like the inside
Yeah.
guts of it, like all the different mechanics and everything. And what those manuals were, they taught you how to completely strip down and take apart the entire vehicle and build it back up. So then if you ever ran into a problem, it's like, well, I know definitely how to do that. It's all in here. Writing all that stuff out is building the repair manual and the modification manual for your sales process. So the more detailed that you are, the better that manual is going to be. And it's going to make life a lot easier when you go to diagnose problems and find weaknesses, which is the next step. So from
Yep.
there, right, we have the steps, we have the exit gates. Moving from one step to the next has a conversion rate. Those are the metrics that you care about, right? So you're
Yep.
looking at, all right, well, I'm in lead stage to booking stage, right? So, all right, to go to the booking stage, from lead to booking stage, let's say I have 100 leads and I book 20 of them. We have a 20% lead to booking conversion rate, right? And then you
Yep.
go through every step in your sales process, and then you compare them to your team. You say, all right, well, like I'm at 20%. Where's everybody else? You can find the stuff in your CRM almost always. If not, get with your manager. They probably have the metrics on this. And if you're at 20% and everyone else is at 50%, that's probably something to improve. What you want to look at is all of the conversion rates. And then you want to find which of yours is the weakest compared to everybody else. And the reason why you're looking for the weakest one is that when you pull that lever, it has the lowest chance of there being a negative impact on your performance and the highest chance of a positive impact. But on top of that, it has the highest chance of being the highest impact, the biggest return that you'll get. So, way to look at it, anytime that you make a change in your sales process whatsoever, something happens that will affect your performance. It's not always going to be positive, though. So, if you say, well, I want to get better, and I want to get better at my closing percentage. All right, cool. Well, what if that's the highest like metric that you have compared to the rest of your team? That's the last one you'd want to work on, because yeah, sure, you might be able to get it a little bit better, but there's a high chance if you make a change, it's going to get worse. So you're looking for the worst one. That way, if you make a change and if it was negative blowback, who cares? You're already at the lowest anyways. And like imagine, we were talking earlier about like investing and stuff like that. Like imagine you're at the casino, right? And there's a game that has the highest chance of winning, lowest chance of losing, and it has the highest payout. Right? Everyone would be playing that game, right? You attack the lowest metric, the one that is your biggest weakness, hands down. That's the one that has the lowest chance of you losing, the highest chance of you winning, and the highest payout. So that's what you're looking for. And
The
then,
biggest return. You got to have an ROI on it, and
yeah, you're
even if
looking
your closing
for the largest
percentage
return.
was improved by 2%, but you already were closing at 90%.
Yep.
But one of the phases from stage 2 to stage 3, you were only at 50%, and you improved that by 25% because you focused on it. Even if you still only close 90% of the deals, if you had 25% more deals get to the last stage, you make a lot more than if you close 2% more of the deals in that phase.
It literally, it's just Moneyball is all
Yeah.
that it is, but it works really well. And you're like, oh, this stuff seems fairly simple. Like it is, but people don't do it. Like it is simple. Like if you know your numbers, you just find your biggest weakness compared to everybody else. And people that say, oh, you shouldn't be comparing yourself to everybody else. That's wildly foolish. Like the only way to know where you are in the game is to know where everybody else is.
Yeah.
If you're running a race, it's very difficult to have your best performance if you're in the front. If somebody's in front of you, you'll probably do better because you're chasing them down. Like at the very least, if you and if you are in the front, if you know how far the person behind you is, at the very least, you'll probably run faster. Like that's the concept, and it's not even a concept; it's essentially a law. So I know time is limited, so we're almost kind of through. What I'd say is the next thing from there, you've identified what that weakness is the same way as a salesperson, when you find pain, you want to make it hurt. Now, why, when you find it with a prospect, you find out, oh, they've got an issue with rebills. All right, well, now we need to really have them appreciate how that's hurting their business, the size and scope of that. Like, why do we do that? Because then they have more urgency and investment and care and motivation to solve the
Yeah.
problem. So just saying, oh, it'd be nice if I could lift my percentage on my bookings. All right, cool. Well, number one, why do you think that that is the thing that you need to focus on the most? And you would write it out. You'd write out, well, I'm the weakest at that compared to everything else on the team. This is where I'm weakest. I've seen the stats. I know it is. All right, well, how's that negatively impacting your performance? Well, I close at double the closing percentage, but my bookings show up half the time to everybody else. So
Mm.
I'm doing twice as much work to get as many people to show up to the meetings. And if I could get them to just show up on the same average as everybody else, I would have twice as many deals because my closing percentage is so high. And you just get size and scope of it because you want it to be personal. You want this to not just be a weakness, you want it to be a problem and a pain that you want to solve. And then once you have that down, you want to start seeking development. So another thing you can look at in the stats is not just what the team averages, but now that you know which one of the conversion rates is your weakest, you can say, all right, well, who's the best? Are there a couple of people that are outliers that are like wildly overperforming the average that I'm not even at? And those are the
Yep.
people first and foremost that you'd want to learn from. So there's three buckets that you'd want to learn from. So that's one. One is like you probably already know. If I look at the bookings and I already wrote down all the actions within that step and I see that I'm lower than everybody else, chances are you can look at those actions and you kind of already know, like, well, yeah, I'm supposed to send social proof and I don't at the end of the booking. I don't send a case
Yeah,
study
there it is.
and I do it in a
Or maybe
short
I don't
window.
ask for the meeting. I'm just waiting for them to volunteer. I think
Right.
a lot of people do that. They give them all the discovery, and then they forget to say,
Yeah.
would you want to have a meeting?
First one is like, so that's the first bucket. It's like, is there some stuff that you really already know that you need to fix and you know what it is? Write that stuff down. And the next one
Yep.
is those people that are the most successful at that conversion rate. Success leaves clues. They're going to give you the best training, better than any course you'll get, better than any YouTube video, any book. They work there. They do the same thing that you do. And the thing that you're weakest at, they're strongest at. They have the best roadmap for you to get better than anybody else. So
Yep.
get with them, make friends with them, learn from them. And then the third one is any external training that you can get, whether it be YouTube, courses, LinkedIn, TikTok, podcasts like this one. You're looking for things based on the step that you're on that will help you get better. Type in keywords based on that step, based on the actions that are within that step. And what you're looking for is things that would fit based on the motion where you're at that you can experiment with. And then from
Yep.
there, you create an action plan. You write down all of the things that you've learned that you could apply that you believe would lead to you having a better conversion rate, and you log them every single day. You write down what it is that you're going to work on, what your plan of attack is, and then every day you have a small goal that you want to accomplish, and you just log it every day for 4 weeks to force a habit. And then at the end, you break it down and you say, all right, well, like, where's my conversion rate now compared to when I started? Is it where I wanted to go? And if not, you start over again. And you keep working at it until you get there. And once you get there, you start over the process again, except instead of that negative salesperson routine where they just change jobs because they could never get better, you've already gotten better. And then you go back and you find the next thing that you're weakest at and you start it all over again and you continue to do it over and over and over again. That's legitimately not just how you become really great, you'll never plateau. So if you're on top, you'll stay on top because you'll continue to raise your weaknesses over and over and over again. And it gets harder. The more that you do it, the harder it gets. And you'll get to the point where it's like, well, I'm better than everybody at everything. And it's like,
Yeah.
all right, well, then what you look at next is which area are you better at them the least? Like, what's the one where it's like, like I'm better than the average, but this one, there's still one guy that's better than me or one girl that's better than me at this. All right, cool. Well, then the goal now is to beat them. How can we
Yeah.
raise it from there? It never ends, though. You can always get better. There's always a way to improve. And that's the only way to consistently make more money year in and year out is if you're never satisfied with your level of development as a salesperson.
And then I think you said that wonderfully, and that was if you're listening to this episode, write a bunch of this down. Like this is really good stuff. If you're a salesperson and you want to be an executive, right? Once you have, most people skip this step. They try to be an executive right away. They're like, hey, I did
Yep.
really good in sales this last year. I hit all my numbers. So can I be the VP of sales? Or can I be the EVP? And it's like, well, first you have to be able to repeat that and be excellent in
Yep.
every area. But you were talking about once you've shored up everything and you continually improve it, you're going to be one of the best or the best. Then you have to be, at the next level. If you're thinking about earning in your career path, how do you sell the organization on the fact that you are the best? And if you start doing other things at the org, that the CEO won't say, well, who's going to sell and who's going to replace that effort?
Yep.
Because if you're a natural seller and you want to move up the org, the only way you can move up an org is if you're replaceable. And it sounds wrong, but it sounds backwards because you don't want to be replaceable. But if you move up and then there's a gap in the organization, then that's bad for the company, right? So natural sellers often get promoted and often have to go to other companies after they've been promoted because they don't transition well to leadership, or because it creates such a big gap in the org because they did it in a proprietary way that wasn't repeatable and predictable and wasn't able to train others to be at least 80% of it. So that's, I think, the biggest gap in high performers is that they're stuck in their high performer role even if they want to move, and companies look at them as almost a liability, the biggest seller, but they can't do anything else, and if they tried then they wouldn't be selling. So I think that my
Yep.
advice would be, if you look at it through the lens of not only do I need to win and it's a competition and I want to beat every other seller at every other company, once I've gotten there, I need to be able to sell the organization on the fact that my process that I've created and documented and staged is repeatable with others, even if I don't want to be the sales manager or the VP of sales, even if I want to be in marketing or CMO, right? You have to be able to say, here's how I did it and why. And that is what most top sellers are missing, almost all of them. And that's where, if you are a top seller listening to this, that's what I would do to impress the CEO of your company. And all the other steps that Barter laid out would be to make more money. And everybody wants to do that, provide for their family. So
Bam. I
there you
love
go.
it. I suppose we can say, I mean, I do have a free course on this. Like, we'll just link it. Like, it is literally free and it covers this stuff a lot more in depth, and breaks everything down. Where if you want it for free, great. If you don't, hey, that's fine too. But if this topic is one that you think is of interest, God bless. We have a course that's free on it.
Yeah, we'll drop the link. Then you don't have
Yep.
to write all this down. It is written down for you.
Yeah.
I would highly suggest doing that as well. So thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Rocket Revenue Podcast. And tell your friends about this. If you found value, share it. That's the only way we grow it. We are not sponsored. And just a little tease, we're going to start bringing on guests. Some of them will be epic guests that you've heard of. Some of them you may not have heard of, but will have very valuable conversations. They're professional salespeople. A lot of actual professional salespeople are not known by many, but they will be on this show. They will share their value, and you will learn and grow and make more money and have a path to predictable and repeatable revenue. That's it for Rocket Revenue. See ya.